Iran. Flint, Michigan native Amir Hekmati was one of the 4 Americans freed from Iran. He met briefly with Congressman Dan Kildee on Monday, who worked for an awful long time to secure this release. Congressman Kildee joins us now. He's also dealing, I should say, with that city's water crisis in Flint, Michigan. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us all the way from Germany this morning. You had a chance to meet with Amir. How's he doing?
Well, you know, he's doing pretty well. For a young man who spent 4.5 years in one of the worst places on earth, I've got to say he came out of it with his own spirit intact. He comes from a great family, and I think that's one of the things that sustained him. He also comes from Flint, Michigan, and we are a tough place, and we're proud of him. Proud of him as an American, but also proud of him as one of our own from Flint.
You are tough, but even for tough people, you know, years behind bars, and even prison in Iran's got to be incredibly difficult, incredibly trying. Did he talk to you about what kind of conditions he lived under there?
He did, and of course we knew, you know, through the years a bit about it because information was able to get out. But, you know, there was a long period of time where he was in solitary confinement, psychological torture in effect. You know, he was sentenced to death at one point in time, expected he was awaiting his execution. Was told he was going to be released many times, and also, you know, all sorts of horrific conditions. He was in a cell at one point in time that was basically 1 meter by 1 meter, not even enough room to lay down. So it was a terrible situation, and that's why we fought so hard to get him home. And he never gave up, we never gave up, and thank God this day finally came.
After all the fighting you did, this deal got held up for hours with the plane on the tarmac. How much did he know about what was going on at that moment, and how nervous was he at that time?
Well, I think once he got to the airport, he had a sense that this was just not another false start. He had been through a few times where when he was told he would be released, and then of course it did not happen. Once he got to the airport, he had a sense that this was actually going to happen. He had a fairly good sense of what was going on. You know, I spent some time with him yesterday, and then went back and had dinner with him, spent a few hours, and we talked about his imprisonment, talked about his release only a little bit, but for the most part, he was curious about what happened in the last 4.5 years, and particularly was surprised to hear how many people had become involved in the effort to bring him home.
Did he have any idea about your efforts, about that efforts? I mean, it's remarkable, 4.5 years behind bars, not to know what's going on your behalf.
Well, he knew his family was fighting for him. He knew I was, because he would get reports. Other prisoners would ask him about who this congressman is and why Congressman help him. But I don't think he had a full sense of how many thousands and thousands of people were engaged in the effort to bring him home. We were having dinner last night, and my phone rang, and it was Madeleine Albright, who I worked with on this case. She was calling to just say congratulations, and I handed him the phone. He was absolutely shocked that so many people, particularly people with that kind of stature, had become involved in his case.
What is next for him, and what does he want now?
Well, you know, I don't think he knows yet what the steps forward look like, other than that he will make those decisions as a free man. He wants to be home. His father's been quite ill, so he's glad that he's home and can go back and see him. But I think he just wants to restart his life. He's a young man. He's 32 years old. He has his whole life before him. And so I don't know that he's made those decisions, but he will make those decisions now, and I think that's something that he's happy about and that we all can be really thrilled for.
Congressman, talk about being in the middle of 2 giant news stories. You're in Germany right now dealing with this prisoner swap. You're also from Flint, Michigan, where there's this water crisis, lead poisoning, because of a choice made by that city 2 years ago. You've been very critical of many officials involved here, particularly the governor. He's giving a very important State of the State address tonight, Rick Snyder is. What do you want to hear from him tonight?
Well, I want him to say that he'll make it right. The decision to go to the Flint River was actually made by the state of Michigan for the people of Flint without their consent. And that led to this cascade of events, including his own agencies ignoring warnings. The state of Michigan made this decision for the people of Flint. They are paying a price. The children of Flint will pay a price for a long time. They need to make it right. They need to provide justice, and that includes all sorts of help to give kids who now will have to have another hurdle of exposure to high levels of lead to overcome. He's got to make sure that those kids are given every opportunity to succeed with all the kinds of support that we know actually works. It's going to take a lot to make it right, and he needs to step up and do that.
A lot of kids are going to need a lot of help. Congressman Dan Kildee, thank you for being with us, and thank you for all your work over the last few years on behalf of Amir Hekmati. Amazing to see him finally released after all this time. Thank you, sir.